Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Arc Rewind. My name is Stanley.
I'm Julia.
I'm Nate.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Georgia.
We are a podcast discussing news and topics regarding architecture from the student's perspective.
All right. All right, Nate, what do you have for us today?
All right. In this episode, we're going to be talking about architecture versus reality, internships and first jobs. The theme of this episode is to look at what happens when the theory of school meets the reality of practice. So, we design utopias in school, but what happens when you land your first real world job? Guys.
Okay. I guess I'll start it off. So I'm currently at my second internship. I have already interned for a previous firm, which was a medium-sized firm. I interned for a year. And over this semester, I started interning for a different firm, which is a bigger firm. And honestly, it's very interesting, I guess, the way the school and the practice clashes for multiple reasons. Because one, you gain access to different tools now. You have research tools that you learn from school. You also are forced in school to learn Rhino, Adobe products, and things like that. And then you start applying them, depending on your firm, you start applying those knowledges onto the practice. And you can also take things away. The things that would take away from the practice would be how to make more, smarter decisions. I guess, it's very hard to describe it sometimes, but it's very interesting, their relationship.
Well, for me, I feel. Can you repeat the question again?
We design utopias in school, but what happens when you land your first reward job? So, what was your exposure to your first exposure to the industry, and talk about that.
I mean, I can definitely tell you that it's a different thing. Like what they teach you in school and everything, and when you get to your first job, you feel like you don't know anything.
Yeah.
Literally. So you have to literally learn every single day. How do you do this? How do you make the drawings? How do you do that? It's not like someone is gonna literally sit down with you and teach you how to do it. Is you're gonna have to be figuring out how to do it as you go. So you're gonna be like, okay, this is the floor plan that we did for this specific building. It's not gonna be the same, but take the ideas and the language that this floor plan has and adjust it to the new one that we're doing. And you have to literally match and play, give it to the person that is gonna be accommodating you or technically your mentor inside of the firm, and they're gonna red mark it, and then you have to adjust it and remember all the adjustment that you did and how do you do it and what was the things that were wrong so you don't repeat those errors again. And basically it's that every single day to make sure that you just get better and you get an understanding of how everything works.
How long have you been interning?
I've been interning for 3 months. I started in May 12th. Then it has been great. I'm in a small, medium size, or about 10 people in the firm, somewhat. And I really enjoy the firm. It's really comfy. I can tell you that.
What kind of work does your firm?
So we basically do a lot of remodelations, interiors, and now we are also doing a lot of. We're trying to get more ground-ups projects, but it's everything. We have commercial and residential, basically.
What about you, Ben? You were saying? Yeah.
Well, I don't have really any experience working, but from what I've gathered, talking to different people, going to the firm visits, it already feels like a different environment altogether from school. Obviously, school's kind of a unique sphere of the social world in and of itself, but at least when it comes to architecture, I could tell right away that there was some differences, especially for example, in the softwares that you have to use. Maybe school likes to focus on one software, but then there's industry standards that most firms tend to stick to that might not be taught in school. So then you have to go out of your way to learn those. And over the years, I've been not necessarily involved in projects, but I've been there while stuff is happening. And I can see how, or I've seen buildings start from from ground up, and have seen all the plans laid out and how often they get changed and everything like that. And I didn't have much of an idea when I saw it because I was really young. But now, like looking back at it, I could tell like it was very intuitive. It's not as simple as you make your design and then that's it. And you go. Like there's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of rethinking, redoing, redrawing. It's trial and error. Right from what I understand, it's trial and error all the way up until you're done.
I haven't really worked in the industry too much. I've been on a few construction sites here and there. I've seen buildings go from foundation up and goes all the way up. And I think it's a really different world in terms of technical skills. Because like in school, obviously we eventually learn HVAC, electrical, plumbing, and all of these things, but it's not something you are really taught very early on. So getting to see it physically happen, the reason why it happens, is a lot different from what you would see at school, where they're teaching you this goes here for this reason versus seeing it. I've seen 2D plans in section and plan view that in reality look so much different because we as human beings aren't two-dimensional creatures. We don't view things in 2D, or we shouldn't view things in 2D.
Yeah.
You should view things in 3 dimensions. So when you draw an apple, you need to think in shade and shadows included.
For me, much like you and Stanley, I haven't had the opportunity, or I haven't internship or gotten like real world experience in the architecture industry, but I have worked in construction. I took a 6 weeks internship in a construction firm, and I got to see, not just how different it is from real life or industry versus school, but I was able to make that connection from like what I was learning in my structures or my materials and methods in real life, in real time. That summer internship, I was mostly they say hanging drywall, but you're not really hanging. You're scrolling drywall into the studs, and I get to learn how far apart should the studs be? What type of screws do you use for screwing in drywalls? What type of drywalls are there? What type of insulations are there? You have a really concrete understanding of like the types of materials, like what type of insulation is it? Fiberglass? Is it matte insulation? You get to see it and get to this is fiberglass. You don't want to touch it. Things like that, or things very visceral things like that. Things that you can only learn by doing.
Yeah.
You can't just learn by reading a book or reading Chinks.
You can try, but again,
you
the
can try.
2D versus the 3D is
Yeah. It's very, very different. Very, very different from school versus in real life. But yeah, going into sort of the second segment, or at least for those of you who have worked in firms, what surprised you the most about professional work? Like, you can talk about office politics, client realities, maybe not politics, endless emails. Like, what was that like?
You wanna get a start?
That's a very hard question. To me, my journey with internships have been amazing.
Mm.
Everyone that has participated in that journey, I'm more than grateful. You were asking about the reality, right?
Yeah, reality.
What shook you the most?
I guess that what shook me is when you're in school and you're learning about materials and methods, you feel like I'm gonna have a little bit of the hang of this, at least somewhat.
Mm.
And it kind of throws back to what you already said. When I had my first job at a medium-sized firm. We were a half and half firm, did public and private jobs. At the time, they were doing more public jobs, which is very different than private jobs. It feels like you're a complete alien, and you have to learn what you said, the policies of the firm. You have to learn how does a practice actually learn, roles, like for example, we would have management meetings every Monday morning, and they were like, "Oh, my project is in SD, that project is in DD, and then we're going to CA." And I'm like, guys, can someone translate? Like, what do you mean SD, DD, CA? What are you guys talking about? an RFQ or RFI and like things like that, like you feel
Lost.
not lost, but you feel some type of like
Overwhelmed.
yeah, like you feel alien. Like it doesn't feel like you belong there in a sense because you don't hear these things in school at all.
Yeah.
So when you touch on a practice, and that's something that I am very grateful for my first firm, is that my beginning wasn't straight up architecture. I helped a lot with marketing.
Yeah.
So it was a lot more friendly beginning because I didn't have to freak out every day about, because I knew a little bit of Revit when I first started. I knew from the academic standpoint because I used to use it a lot in lower division.
Mhm.
So I didn't have every time that I go to work freak out about, oh my God, I gotta learn about Revit. I also need to understand where they're staying. I also need to understand where's the project at. Now, what am I doing? Am I doing it correctly? No, I was able like, okay, I'm doing Illustrator and design, which is something that we're already familiar in school. Wow, like it felt more like in the beginning like a shadowing, which was great because it gave me a sense of like, okay, they're helping me, but I also need to do my part. I also need to research. I also need to understand what all of those terms mean. So, like, that was the first thing that shook me, how much I didn't understand what was going on. And
Well, what shook me the most personally is that, again, when you're coming out of school, you technically have an idea. I've been using Revit for a year now, and I thought that I was gonna be able to get to a firm and get myself put together, just figure out my things. I'm gonna know how to move around. The first day they put me on a computer and they put me to do some door schedules and so on Revit. I didn't know what I was looking. I didn't understand the plans. I was just like,
first schedules freaked me out.
So it was, and it's the biggest door schedule that they ever, well, not that they ever have, but it's one of the biggest ones that they have had in the past, let's say 6 months to now. So not say, yeah, because it's about 1,200 doors.
What?
Yeah, and they usually get like 50 door schedules. But the one that they throw me in is at 1,200.
Wow.
And I had to figure out my way throughout. Thankfully, I had one of my principals. She was really nice, and she actually sat down and she explained to me. She draw with me and explained to me exactly how does the door schedule does. And when she saw that I wasn't understanding on paper, she took me to a door itself, and she was like, "Okay, so you see that the material of the door is wood.
Yeah.
So this is type A. Let's call it type A. The hardware has 3 hinges." And it has a mechanical.
Or you're talking about the handle?
The handle. It has a regular handle. That's hardware A, right? You go to the second door. It has the same hardware, but the door is metal. So now you have door A and door B, and then both are hardware A.
Really?
But it's a lot of complex things. There's a lot more into that same door schedule, but what I'm trying to go on to extend my talk is there's so much more than what you don't know that it's just impressive how when you go from school to work, you have an idea that you know something, that you're gonna be able to work on something that you somewhat understand. But if it's not really design, like conceptual design, you don't really know much into the workspace. You're gonna get there and you're gonna be blank, and you're just gonna have to figure out, just like you did in school, how to understand everything you're looking and that you're doing.
Let me just add to him, just so we're all understanding. A door schedule is like an Excel sheet. We're in a building, for example, George was saying about 1,500 doors, is every single door that is inside of that building. And you gotta write down all of that, so whenever you give it to the contractor, he knows where is each door and what is the quality of each door. And you gotta do that with the doors, you gotta do that with the windows, you gotta do that with furniture, with electronics. You have a schedule for every single little thing on the building. So that's when George was talking about schedule, it's just hard because it gets extensive and you can get confused. And
There's so many numbers that if you just blink too fast, you might get confused and put the wrong number, and that screws the whole process up.
Yeah.
There's so much blank page and that you have to fill up and you have to make sure that everything is correct, that if you make a mistake, it can go back
Yeah.
and bite you.
And if you work in Miami, you even have an NOA on top of that, which is a notice of acceptance
Yeah.
because of the hurricanes.
Hmm.
So you also got to make sure that if you're doing a project in Miami, you're getting your NOAs so you can add to your door window schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily needs to be a hurricane impact, but it's acceptable.
Hmm.
So that's what we mean by, for example, all of this, you have no idea. You don't hear about those schedules in school.
No.
You don't hear about none of this in school,
Yeah.
which is fine. Which that's why on the previous episode of ours, I had mentioned, I think it's good to have this gap.
Hmm.
Because if there was no gap, I think it would have been so bland.
When you guys were starting your internship, did you guys have like imposter syndrome? Like you felt like you didn't belong here, like you're not, good enough to even. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it happens because whenever you go into a workspace that even if the people are amazing and they really want to help you,
Yeah.
if you don't know what you're doing and you feel like you are not really, like, let's say that you go tomorrow to a lawyer's office, right? And they're talking to you about this and the law and this and that and that. You don't understand what they're talking about, so you just feel lost. It's basically what happened whenever you go to an architecture office to work. At the beginning, you feel like you don't belong here and that everything that you study doesn't match what you're doing on the office, and you feel like you're the one at fault, and that you have to be that you should be that you should be already had
You
this
should have already
experience.
known.
Yeah, you should have already known. But that's yes and no, because at the same time everyone knows that you don't know and they hope you to understand in a sense.
I think that's just any job.
Yeah.
You know, you walk in and you think or you have some preconceived
Yeah.
notion, and then you sit down and it's not even. It's maybe a little bit like that, but not even. Because I know I worked at a tax office like a while back, just for to have some money in my pocket. And first day, there was already there was issues with the first people walking in for their first people bright and early in the morning. There's already an issue going on, and I look at the lady who was helping me, and I'm like, I know like there's normally issues with like clients, but like is it normal for it to happen this early in the morning? She's like, yes, it happens every day. So I'm like, oh, that's good to know.
But that's
And then
great.
and my job at the time was just to fill out all the documentation so that it's all ready, to get sent upstairs. And in my head, I'm like, oh, it's just you fill out some numbers and stuff like that, and it's all good to go. But there's whole categories you have to look through because everyone fits into a different bracket, and then there's some people come in from out of state, so they have a whole process, that's entirely different. And then you have to pick up phone calls, and then you have to make sure that because where I was, we were in the Bronx, and there's a lot of and in that office where I was working at, there's a lot of people who speak Spanish who go there. So you have to switch between English or Spanish depending on who's picking up on the phone, and then sometimes you might get someone who doesn't speak any of those, and you have to try and figure out how to communicate with them. And then there's the people walking in. And it's a whole like there's like 50 things going on at the same time, and you have to figure out how to manage it. And there's people there that might help you,
It's great.
but ultimately it's up to you to rise up to the occasion.
Yeah.
How did you guys adapt? Was it like, you went on the first day of internship and you saw this thing like, oh, I'm going back to YouTube today?
Wait, I didn't answer about the imposter syndrome.
Oh, yeah.
To me, because before I had my first internship, it took me a year to find one, which I see the shift on the industry where people have been having an easier time finding internships. But when we started looking for internships, it was so hard. It was so hard. I reached out to crazy amount of firms. And when I finally got an interview at my first firm, I was so like, no, she's gonna tell me no. I'm gonna get my contract and it's gonna be like, psych, haha. Like, you're not gonna get it. To the point that no one knew. I didn't tell, like, the only person who knew about the interview and the contract and everything was my mom. No one around me knew anything. And then once I signed the contract, I was like, okay, this is for you. My family knew. I didn't tell any of my friends. I didn't even put on LinkedIn.
Wow.
Because I was like, someone's gonna look at me and be like, well, it was all a joke. You know? I was like, I don't know. Like, I guess that was my moment of imposter syndrome. I didn't tell anyone. Like, afterwards, as time passed, I got more comfortable with it. I kind of put my feet on the ground, like, bro, come on, now. Yeah, okay. So I was, like, able to talk more about it. But I was keeping it so private because at the same time, like, I have the feeling that, I don't know, it wasn't clicking for me that I got it. And I guess you could say I was fangirling a little bit. But it also inside of the practice, I guess that, like, my imposter syndrome was more like, I know the concept because I've learned in school. I know a couple of the materials because I learned in school. When it comes to materiality itself, it's a lot easier to get the grip because of materials and methods and things like that and structures. You get the grip quickly, which that helps a lot. But whenever you go to the actual move on of the process, like I was like, okay, I don't know. I think
details, right?
Yeah, like details and like the phasing of the projects, you know, it gets very different. And I was like, I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't think I'm doing so great. And then I decided to have an initiative on creating my own diary per se. Like I have my diary from my first internship, and now I have one for my current internship, where I wrote all of the vocabulary, like the process. In case, for example, funny enough, some of the things even overlapped with materials and methods too.
Wow.
And I was like, wait, I've seen that, but because I did research. So it kind of went away as time passed.
You eventually get used to it.
What was your other question?
Yeah, I was like when you guys like had that moment of like, wow, okay, I don't know any of this. Was it like, oh, I have to quickly like go grab the next, book about this and read it, or go on YouTube, or? Mine
was the moment of the diary. Like when that clicked in, I was like, guys, I can't be 6 months sitting into the office and not knowing what they're saying. We need to speak the same language. Like, come on now. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna start a notebook. I'm gonna write everything down. Personally, I'm the type of person that wants to write it by hand. I have an iPad. When I write it by hand, it's even better, and it feels like it's engraved in my head. So I started this diary practice, where afterwards the information on it I already have memorized. But it's still good to keep. I think I like to look back and be like, okay, I'm happy about it. But that's when it clicked in for me. I was like, come on, Joel, you gotta get a grip. You gotta start speaking the same language.
In my case, I would just ask questions. Like whenever I didn't understand what they were saying, I would like, hey, what does that mean? And they would explain to me. Mine is not as hers. It's like a memory, but my memory is whenever I have a conversation with a person, that conversation gets engraved in my head, and that's how I memorize stuff.
Or just watch people. And my experience is not the same as them, but I feel like, it could probably still apply where you just, if you have some type of free time, let's say you just finished whatever your assignment was and you're waiting for the next step, just look over or ask if you can shadow someone else and see what they're doing.
Yeah.
And then that way, you can start to pick up on what's going on. And then what he said, ask questions.
Yeah.
For me, I think doing the construction, I would say like the biggest surprise for me was like understanding like how much we as architects put on people to do. It's like like manual labor is not easy, guys. It's not easy. I think you've also worked construction too, so you can do that. So it's like it's not easy. It's like I was like we would get there maybe 8 and then clock out maybe 3 or 4, but I was sweating nonstop, like just working, and all I was doing is drywall. It wasn't like I was outside, it wasn't like we were pouring concrete. It's just drywall. It's like, man, we can't be doing all this crazy designs in school and not think about how it's gonna get built or how the amount of stress you're gonna put on people to do all of this.
Yeah, like they say, the engineer hates the architect, and the design or the contractors hate the engineer.
Yeah. What was it? An architect's dream is an engineer's nightmare or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, yo guys, like maybe all this crazy AI stuff might be too much, but I mean, obviously, technology is gonna catch up with that, and craftsmanship is gonna catch up with that. But just getting to see that, yeah, you're designing this in school, you're doing all this really crazy, abstract, and really complex stuff, and it's a little grounded in reality, but not really grounded in reality, because you're only going through the details a little bit, like even in DeFi. It wasn't the full extent of like the wall details. It was just like a watered down version of it.
Yeah.
But then once you actually for you guys, maybe you got to see it, like, wow, this is a lot, And it's like, okay, this is a lot for just a small, simple design, good design. Now I think of that for like,
Yeah.
The curves and all of that.
Yeah.
It's like,
It's interesting because there's a lot of architects, both past and present, that think that it's not their responsibility to think about Bob the construction worker.
that's what the next.
Bob the builder.
Bob the builder.
I don't know, man. I think hop on to the next one. I'll give you my intake more on.
Okay, so the third segment of the podcast episode. How well does architecture school prepare you for practice? Should schools focus more on business, construction, or technology?
I believe it should focus on the business side
Yes.
because that's something that they don't really teach you on practice itself.
Mm.
And if you don't research it yourself, you're not really gonna find out how is it work. Because at the end of the day, the practice part, you will learn it as you go.
Yeah.
The business side, if you don't research it, as you just mentioned, if you don't research it by yourself, it's not gonna be taught to you. Or it's hard for you to find someone that will tell you how to do it. Because at the end of the day, if you teach someone how to walk and how to run, they will run by themselves, by their own way.
So you think that maybe we have like a little business class added to our program where we
I feel like it should be elective. I'll be honest, because not every single person that goes into architecture plans to go into that business side of architecture. It should be an elective. It is important, I will say, for those who do want to become like business owners, to create their own practice, create their own research if they need to.
I think you learn a little bit more too because we got the opportunity on the convention, the AIA convention, to talk to the professor that teaches pro practice.
Mhm.
You are gonna learn a little bit more about that during pro practice because you get to see the AIA contracts and everything.
Mhm.
But
It's
like what George was saying is that if you don't research on your own, most likely you're not gonna learn it. But another really important thing is having a good mentor inside where you work. If you're not the biggest fan, which gratefully I haven't had that experience with either of my internships, if you're not the biggest fan of the culture of the firm, you still need a great mentor because what exactly are you learning? Like if you don't have someone that is gonna be like, hey, I see that you're struggling a little bit, let me sit down, or do you know this concept? I can sit down. I had this on my previous firm and I have this on my current firm where I have someone constantly mentoring me. And I think that that's very important because, for example, the business part, in your case, you're very fortunate to learn from your principal of it. I feel like he is a mentor to you.
Mhm.
Other firms, you might not have the opportunity to. In bigger firms, you might not have the opportunities to. When you work, there's a really big difference in between working at a medium to small size firm and working at a bigger size firm. When you work at a bigger size firm, you have access to so much information, like so many different types of projects that sometimes is a little bit overwhelming, which that's one point of the learning aspect of an internship. When you work at a smaller firm, you might have better chance of leadership roles. You're gonna be able to tap in better into like business aspect, which I think I am a business girly. I love the business part of architecture. So like you're saying, it should be a lecture because I've heard from attending different AIA conferences is that, funny enough, FAU architecture students, they're the ones that turn out to be the most entrepreneurial ones out of the other schools. So, and that's because we don't have a business part or business elective inside of it. I don't know what it is that FAU has, but we just turn out to be more entrepreneur, which I think that's great. Somehow I ended up here and I'm happy about it. But I think that if there were like classes that could bring you more to sites, or professors that have firms bring you to their firm and like do some sort of like class that like rotates, like, okay, this group of people is gonna be following me this week to my firm, and you're gonna shadow me, and you're gonna learn progressively better. But I think that so far, going back to the things that I said in the beginning, I think it's important to gap. Because whenever you are interning, you see so much of the real world that, depending on the size of the project that you're doing or the stage of the project that you're doing, you're not gonna have the creativity. If we were to be like very similar to school, to practice, we would have not had the chance to explore creativity. We would have not had the experience to research. So I think it's good for them to be different, because somehow, funny enough, somehow their differences kind of go together very well. And it's something that I might tell you, you might not understand it. The only way that you're going to understand it is if you experience it. And I always recommend people do an internship. You're going to make your decisions a lot better. I think that school's doing a good job.
I think, yeah, I do. I agree with you. I think schools should do more to, at least from my experience, to do more to get people outside and into construction, see the construction aspect of it. Because I remember when we had our first materials and methods, our professor talked about how in MIT, their architecture program, or maybe that's how they did it back then, but they had a requirement where every student had to go work construction. I think that would be really helpful, because the more you learn about construction methods, the better your projects are.
Yeah.
The better, because even my D6 project, I went out to research about a certain type of structure, which was a lamella structure, which is a type of wood structure, how to use wood. And if I didn't learn about that, my project would have been drastically different. So getting to learn about the types of the construction, how you actually construct things, how things actually come into reality. I think that's a valuable thing that every student should make use of, or even every school should push students to learn more about that.
Yeah.
I feel like or at least maybe it's a me problem. We tend to brush off or just brush over a lot of the materials and methods, and I mean it is a lot though. It's a lot, but we tend to maybe water it down and not focus on it as much in our design studios. And I feel like if we really dialed in on that, we would have better projects.
Well, it's definitely not a you issue. That's just like an everybody thing.
Yeah, I think it would be good. Again, the same thing with the internships.
Yeah.
How do they go together? You only understand the construction methods. Yes, you have materials methods.
Yeah.
You get aware of the vocabulary. You get aware of like what's going on. But if you're not experiencing, if you're not seeing it, for example, in your case, I can tell you one thing: you going and rolling drywall, most likely you learn more about the construction aspect than me and Giorgio together so far. Not because we haven't gone to construction sites yet.
We haven't
But-
experienced that part.
Exactly, like we do, but because we don't have so much experience with reasons,
Yeah.
companies are liable depending on what we do. So we're always there more like shadowing. You were there acting, you were learning.
Yeah.
And that, like, I feel like this idea of like touching it and doing it, you learn a lot more.
Yeah. Even if you look at the history of like architecture or the profession of architects to begin with, it was really focused on architects going into other disciplines, going to actually build their projects. Like if you go back 400 years ago, you look at I'm getting philosophical now. You look at the work of Alberti and all those early architects. They went out and they worked on their projects, like they built their projects, and then it was towards our time now where they sort of divided the idea of the architect and the builder, and that led to a lot of gap between architects and builders. Because even you might have experienced it too. There's a lot of times architects and the builders they're always fighting.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think they were always fighting. It's just when there's a problem with the financial parts, that's when everything can get really stressful in a sense.
Yeah.
Because where money is involved, that's where everyone technically shows their true colors. So that's when it can get a little turned to the side. But I do feel like the best way, in a sense, to get these students whenever they go to a firm, and the firm can do this. This is not really for the school itself.
Mm.
Is whenever they have these students come in to do their internships, for them to not be so lost at the beginning, they can also just put them to do designs and as like design concept, design development. Because at the end of the day, that's what we are best in. Because that's what we've been doing for the past 3 years now. So, and I'm not saying for them to just do that and just stay in the room. I mean, like making them do the design, and from the design, they teach them, okay, this is really good, but maybe you could put this wall here because whenever you do the detail, it's gonna need this style of work, and you cannot really build it this way, and just move forward and adjusting the design itself. It of course depends on which side of the firm is, because if it's a small firm and they don't get so much of ground up projects or projects that they actually design, then it's kind of hard for them to have students designing the entire project by themselves. But if it's a big firm and they can have the students, in a sense, have their design and work on it, the gap gets way closer to what school is. And as long as you have someone that keeps managing and making sure that you're not going out of control with your design, I feel like that way it's a good way to keep the integration between the two worlds.
I personally disagree. Sorry.
Okay.
Not because you have your point of view, but I can tell you one thing. I don't think that if I were to be in a position where I'm designing in the beginning, I'm going back to the beginning, not now, and then we hop on to now. I don't think I would have appreciated having a mentor. I don't think I would have appreciated learning on my own, and I don't think I would have appreciated how different they are. Because if you think about it, if you're going to a firm, obviously it's still gonna have contrast because it's not regular design. And you're going there to design, what exactly outside of the normal you're learning?
I mean, I'm talking about, in a sense, closing the gap between such a big gap from going from school to the practice. I'm not saying you will eventually learn all those things, either you want them or not, because at the end of the day, it will be thrown at you. It's just a less of a rapid change from design studio to design at a firm.
Well, maybe the to meet in the middle would be, what if schools would then invite people from firms to be like the jurors during presentations, so then, or I guess more often than what they do.
Well, I think the issue with that is that we as students don't get into the technical.
Yeah.
Not as in depth as, at your internships. So if you're trying to get like someone from like one of their jobs to come in and give critiques, they're going to give design critiques. They're not giving technical critiques.
Yeah.
They might do it a little bit. I know they do it a lot more in the year above us.
Yeah.
When actually even next semester they do it a little more because they go into structure and HVAC and plumbing and electricity, all of that. But as of right now, we are strictly like design based. So it's bringing in someone even from a more technical background isn't really going to do much in terms of like bridging that gap because they're not criticizing us on the technical. They're criticizing us on design.
I mean, on that note, though, like even in the past 2 semesters, we've, at least from my memory, like we've even been told like to try and implement the more technical stuff into our projects, even if on a basic level. So, the intent is already there, but it could go a little further. And I guess to add on to that, like, at least for me personally, I feel like you have to design with the technical in mind. You can't just make something weird and crazy and then expect it to work. It's like what you're saying with the architect's dream is an engineer's nightmare.
Yeah.
Like like yeah, it's all it's a funny little saying, but like there's a reason why some people say this because not everything you can think of can actually be made. You have to work within the confines of what reality is. Of what works and what is known.
I think. Sorry.
It's not that it can't be made.
Yeah,
I disagree
it's
with that. Not right now.
It's gonna take a long time. Like these are calculations. Maybe AI could help us with this, but it takes a really long time to calculate all of that, take all into consideration,
Health, safety, and welfare.
Yeah, all of that. So it's not that what's my train of thought?
It's not that it can't be done.
Yeah, it's not that it can be done, but it's that it's very intensive process.
It just requires more time, and time is money.
Yeah.
I think that this is what I was going at when I said I disagree. The bridging of the gap should come from the school, not from the practice. Why? Because again, with what Ben just said, life, safety, and welfare. As an architect in the practice, you cannot make mistakes. And if you are putting a student, I understand it is like a practice, and you also said like, well, most likely would have to come from a bigger firm because they might have more resources available, they have more people available. But I think that if you are put in a position where you need to get all the knowledge that you have, which is not crazy much, and push forward and research, I think that you're gonna grow so much more than if someone were to be like, come on, I'm gonna give you my hand, we're gonna design together. In the beginning, I know it's not exactly like that.
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is basically, how basically now you're designing.
That's what I was gonna get there.
Yeah, so I'm not talking to be that way. I'm talking more so in a sense that you will be designing, you will show the person that is in charge of you in a sense, and that person will tell you what's not working, and they will explain to you why. And from there on, then I'm guessing if it's possible, they will move you forward to start seeing the floor plans and understanding how they read and everything. Because at the end of the day, if they just throw you in a room and they put you to, this is not what happens to me, by the way. I'm not going to this, but I'm saying because I've heard people that they just throw them in a room and they just tell you draw this and draw that. You don't really get an experience. You're not really learning from anything. You're just copying a floor plan from another floor plan or whatever, and you're not really understanding. You're just doing the same thing over and over and over, and that's what usually happens in big firms. They just make you do renovations for the bathroom. You know exactly what to do with the renovation of the bathroom, and that's what you do because you're an intern.
Yeah.
That's not really. That's what I was trying to get. I'm not saying in your experience. I'm not saying in my experience. I'm saying in big firms usually they grab students and they put them to do something specifically every single day. A good way to close that gap is to put them to design, which this is what they do, and they just move forward with design to make a project really nice and actual buildable.
This is allegedly, you guys. We don't know if actually big firms do that. I don't have the
Yeah.
sort of experience. Just making sure that out there. I understand your point. You don't think students should come in to be only used for process and progress,
Correct.
just for drafting.
Yes.
Which, thankfully, we haven't had this experience. I guess that the way to bridge the gap is that they have an intern. It would be a different look. Instead of like you have two people entering, a designer one, and an intern. They would have different treatments. Because the designer one, technically, I mean, if you're coming out of school with no experience, I guess they would have a similar type of experience. But if they don't, the designer one would go straight up into progress, process, doing all of that, like drafting. And a student would most likely go through a process of like, I'm helping you design a landscape. I'm helping you do this. I'm helping you do that. Yes, like a remodeling, or I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
But personally, I would have not changed my experience at all. And due to the 1 year of experience I had in my previous firm, now I'm at a position where I get to help the one that is in charge of me to design.
Yeah.
It's the first time I'm actually I did design a couple of times before, but not crazy much. Like I had in my previous firm projects where I get to help, it was just me and another person, it was always just me, either me with my principal or me with a project manager. Now I'm actually there's more people above me, but I actually get to design and sketch, which funny enough, sketch is very important because sometimes you bring the plans to your principal, he's gonna sketch it on top, you're gonna learn how to understand the sketch and put it into the computer. So I don't know. I guess I think that the way to bridge the gap would be from the school.
I honestly kind of agree. I don't think the bridging isn't going to be much because we as a field are we have a holistic approach to architecture. We are going to continually learn until we're 80 years old.
Yeah.
Like,
And even then,
that's just because you died. There are people who have gone their entire lives continually learning.
Good point, man. Good point.
So even if we don't learn everything we need from school, we're going to learn it when we get to practice.
Yeah, of course.
No, I think it's good the gap because you're not so strict. You learn which are the things I think you asked in the beginning. What are the things that we learn from school that we have to apply into practice? Time management. How you need to have your own agency. You might be under 10,000 people. You still need to have your own agency to move forward with the things you have to do. Otherwise, it's not gonna work. Collaboration. These things that we have group works. Sometimes it gets hard depending on the people because this is even the best part. You get to pick in school the people that you're working with, so it becomes even easier. But in practice, sometimes you do not get to pick who you're working with. Sometimes the client picks the contractor you're going to work with or the engineer you're going to work with, and maybe you already had a bad experience with the engineer. How is that going to go? Like all of these things, like I guess all of the social aspects of architecture school, they are heavily applied onto practice. I guess just more what Ben had said previously, the technical, because we don't touch so much of the technical. We don't know so much of the phasing of the projects. That's when you feel alien inside of a practice, which I personally think that this, when you step out, I think it's important.
So, guys, what are some advice for future interns? 3 sentences or less.
Oh, Lord. Yeah.
Not this again.
I'm counting, don't worry.
Wait, you already lost one in one.
Are you going? You want to say something?
Advice? Don't be afraid to ask questions.
My advice is research and work for those that you admire.
Is that a period or a comma?
That's a period. Be curious and find a good mentor. Find a good mentor. Like, there's nothing more that I recommend than that. This is me keeping it shorter. I could have said more.
Good.
Advice.
So yeah, what's an advice you'd give to yourself the first day you entered internship?
Don't be so scared to not know, because they know that you don't. They know that you're here to learn, and they're not gonna be judging you by the fact that you don't know the things that they're telling you to do.
That's important.
Yeah. I'd say for those taking internship, take agency in your work. Take agency in your research. Take agency in the fact that you're at an internship. Make sure you get everything you can out of that internship. Knowledge, experience, even maybe a mentor.
Yeah.
And money.
That too.
Yeah, please guys, don't work for free. I don't recommend that.
That is advice.
No volunteer work, please.
Yeah. For me, I'll probably say I want to touch back on what you said previously, which was that it takes a long time to like learn architecture. You can be learning for eternity. And my advice is always think long term. Like it takes a long time to be a good designer, to be a great designer. And even the best architects that you know, it took them a long time, a very long time. So always be willing to learn, always be curious, always maybe even look out for a mentor. And yeah.
Can I add one last thing?
Yeah.
Don't be scared about the future because the only limit, honestly, is the sky. Honestly, if you look what every single architect I'm talking about star architects. What every single star architect have right now and they have achieved, it all started from a small experience. It all started from an internship.
Mm.
If you don't romanticize your experience, I don't know what else to tell you, but don't feel like you're limited. There's always a better opportunity. There's always a different way. And you can do this. And find a great mentor.
Great words of advice.
Put it on the block.
Yeah,
Write that down.
Write that down. Put it on a t-shirt. All right, I guess that wraps up episode 5 of the Arc Rewind podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to follow us on our other social media platforms: YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and LinkedIn as well. Thank you and have a good day.
Bye.
Have a good day.
Episode 5.